The only thing that's deeper than these running back rankings is Josh Allen's deep ball. The only difference is I'm more accurate. Hit that like button and let's talk about the top 36 running backs. What's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Headliners. I'm Kyle Richardson. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. Really pumped to talk about the top 36 running backs. So we're not talking just running back ones or running back twos. We are going through running back threes. So all the way down to number 36 here in this episode. Don't forget though, make sure that if you haven't done so yet, you pre-order that Fantasy Headliners draft guide that we've got coming out. We have 333 player profiles that are going to be in that. So tons and tons of information, diving in even deeper than this episode will be here into quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, everybody. So make sure you get out there and you pre-order that today if you haven't already. Only $19.99, one of the best bargains in the industry, chock full of information. And if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, don't hate on me. Don't comment already. I'm just poking a little fun at Josh Allen. I didn't mean anything by it. Having a little bit of fun. So thanks for sticking with me through the jokes. We're going to talk a lot of information. If you're a part of Headliner Nation already, thanks for coming back to another episode. But if you haven't joined Headliner Nation yet, hit that subscribe button below, like the video, share the video, all of those things. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. And if you are new to the channel, we like to run things through pretty quickly here. So we are going to jump into this video. We're going to talk about the top 36 running backs. As always, though, we're one of the most interactive channels here on YouTube. So comment below if there's something that I missed or a question that you have, let me know, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. So let's go ahead and start jumping into these, and we're going to just go straight through. We're going to do running back ones and then twos and then threes. So we're going to go 1 through 12 to begin with. And the first running back up, maybe it surprises some people, maybe it doesn't. It just depends. But we're going to be going with Ezekiel Elliott as our running back one. Well, I am anyway. My running back one in 2019. I've talked about it quite a bit. If you take Ezekiel Elliott's receptions per game, which was over 6, and expand it out over the course of 16 games, the only running back in the NFL last year that would have had more receptions than him is Christian McCaffrey, who I have at running back 2. Ezekiel Elliott is going to get plenty of work in the passing game. He's going to get plenty of work in the run game. This offense is going to run through him. He's my running back one. He's going to have an excellent season. I'm really looking forward to what he can put together. Now, I know there's some people that might be a little bit concerned, especially with the issues that he had with that security guard. I understand that. However, nothing's happened at this point, so he is my running back one for the 2019 season. Christian McCaffrey coming in at number 2, a fabulous season last year. With the injuries to Cam Newton, maybe we see them lean on Christian McCaffrey just a little bit more. I'm also wondering if, because of those injuries to Cam Newton, some of those goal line carries that Cam Newton has typically taken himself in the past, if maybe he won't see nearly as many, so maybe Christian McCaffrey will find the end zone a little bit more this year. Saquon Barkley coming in at number 3. He's the consensus, for the most part, number 1 pick right now, especially in PPR leagues. And I will let you know that these rankings are basically my half PPR ranking. So Saquon Barkley coming in at number 3 for me, just because I think I don't trust Daniel Jones or Eli Manning this year. I am really worried that we're going to have a situation where Saquon Barkley is the only guy that is being focused on that offense, and they're really stacking the box trying to stop him. And he still has good volume. His efficiency will end up coming down some. And if that happens, that could knock him down a little bit. But again, that offense is also going to run through him. I still don't 100% trust the offensive line. I know they've worked on it a little bit this offseason. We'll see what happens. But Saquon Barkley is going to be number 3 for me just because of some of those concerns. I can't put him above guys like Ezekiel Elliott or Christian McCaffrey, who I believe not only will get that volume, but will be a little bit more efficient with those touches as well. Moving on now, number 4 is going to be Alvin Kamara. Mark Ingram is gone. We've got Latavius Murray there. I think Latavius Murray will be a good complement. I think he's a guy that you could start, especially if Kamara were to miss a game, or if it's a situation where maybe they're facing a defense that's not great against stopping the run. However, Kamara, he's going to get a little bit larger of a workload this year, I believe. They do have Jared Cook at tight end now, so they have a little bit better of a tight end situation this year, so that could help out. If a guy like Tre'Quan Smith were to take the next step, then that could maybe hurt his receptions a little bit more as well, but Kamara is still going to be a beast. Melvin Gordon has just been super consistent the last couple of years. We're going to put him at number 5. He's going to continue to do what he does. Now, my next couple of ones, Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook, having them over Todd Gurley, and I'll get to Gurley in just a second. But Mixon and Cook, Mixon especially, I think he's in for a great season. He was just outside the top 5 in terms of total touches last year. The offensive line there, their first overall pick, not first overall pick, but their first round pick was Jonah Williams, who was considered to be the top offensive line in really all of the draft. So the Bengals were very lucky to get him where they did. They spent a 4th round pick on a guard out of Ohio State as well. So they've revamped that offensive line even a little bit more than they did last year. Hopefully that helps Mixon. But, having a guy like Zach Taylor coming in, used to be a quarterback coach for the Los Angeles Rams. What if Joe Mixon becomes Taylor's Todd Gurley? What if that happens? What if he tries to utilize him in the same way? Joe Mixon is going to shoot up draft boards this year. I've got him at number 6 right now, and I feel like that's being decently conservative. If he were to get a Todd Gurley-esque workload, he could go up all the way above Alvin Kamara. We'll see what happens. I like Joe Mixon this year. Dalvin Cook, I know we have injury concerns. I know a lot of people are weary about drafting him, but if you get Dalvin Cook for a full 16 games, the dude is going to be a running back 1, locked and loaded. There's no doubt in my mind. At the very end of last year, after he got healthy and came back, he averaged over 5 yards per carry. Kirk Cousins being in his second year with those weapons, I love that. Hopefully that helps him and that offense take a little bit more of a step forward. That would be really great for them to see. I think that helps Cook. But having Dalvin Cook working in the pass game and the run game, especially if they try to lean more towards run a little bit more this year, he's in for a fantastic season. He just has to stay healthy. Obviously, that's number 1, stay healthy. Number 8 is going to be Todd Gurley, and number 9 is going to be David Johnson. Now let's talk about these two for a second. Todd Gurley, I'm not taking him out of my running back 1. A lot of people are super scared off by him. He's a round 2 pick for me at latest right now. If we get closer to the season and he looks to be healthier and healthier, maybe he jumps back into round 1, a late round 1 pick. I do have concerns, though, that they are going to work to lighten his load. I'm not concerned about him specifically being injured. I'm concerned that they're going to use Darrell Henderson and say, hey, this guy is just going to help take away from Gurley just a little bit. And if you start taking away from Gurley a little bit, he's not the first overall running back anymore, but he's still a top 10 running back 100%. He's so good. I know the knee concerns a lot of people. I'm staying away from some of those concerns right now. I would fully encourage you to also just kind of block some of that noise right now. Let's see where we're at in a month or two, and then we'll kind of go from there. But he's still a top 10 running back for me. And then David Johnson, I like David Johnson. I do, and I want to like this offense a lot as well. I just don't like it right now. They didn't really do a whole lot this offseason to fix the offensive line issues. He's going to have a rookie quarterback. As good as Kyler Murray was in college, sometimes quarterbacks aren't just going to be able to get away from those bad offensive lines. It's going to be a new system that he's learning. He's got a new head coach, a rookie head coach in Cliff Kingsbury, who I do believe in, but I'm looking at this offense more along the lines of 1 to 2 years down the road. I don't think they're going to be great this season. I think they're going to be good. I think they will have their struggles, though, and some inconsistencies, and that's why David Johnson is a little bit back towards the bottom half of running back 1s for me right now. Going back into it now, Nick Chubb coming in at number 10. I definitely love Nick Chubb. It's going to be week 10 before Kareem Hunt sees the field. It's going to be Chubb's backfield that entire time. I love Nick Chubb. People are scared off by Kareem Hunt right now. Don't be. Nick Chubb is still a round 2 pick for me. He's a guy that I really like. I think he's going to have such a great first half of the season that even when Kareem Hunt comes back, Nick Chubb is still going to be so far up there that even if he takes a little bit of step back toward the end of the season, he'll have those numbers really built out to start the year. Le'Veon Bell coming in at number 11. Yes, there's some concerns with him being off. The one thing I will encourage you, though, that if you don't draft Le'Veon Bell, if he gets off to a slow start, put some trade offers in for him at the beginning of the season, because I do think maybe the first 2, 3, 4 games, it just doesn't look that great. And then you go get him after he has a chance to ramp up and get going and get loose, and then he's going to take off at that point. I like the Jets offense a lot this year. I think they're going to take a step forward. I like the Jets as a whole this year. I think they're going to be a lot better. And then rounding out my running back ones is James Conner. I am worried about potential workload. I wouldn't say split, but I do think Jalen Samuels is going to get a lot more work this year than what he did last year. Again, I like James Conner. I didn't have him as a running back one for a while there. I had some other guys here. I've switched it up a little bit, though, as the offseason has gone along, just because in a half PPR format, James Conner is still going to get a little bit of work. He's the one guy, though, that by the time the season gets here, I would not be surprised if I have taken him out of my running back ones and slipped him more into those running back twos. We'll see what happens. We'll see if there's any injuries. We'll see how offenses develop throughout the offseason and things like that, but he's definitely a guy that I'm keeping an eye on, and he could be replaced by this next guy, Devonta Freeman, coming in at number 13 for me. I definitely think he has a bounce back season this year. I know people are concerned about his injuries, but that Falcons offense did really, really good without having a good run game last year. To get Freeman back, Freeman's going to have a lot of holes. He's going to have a lot of room, especially when you have weapons like Calvin Ridley and Austin Hooper, who took a step forward, and of course Julio Jones. When you have guys like that can spread the field and can pull linebackers away from the line of scrimmage, Devonta Freeman could get a whole lot of room and have a lot of yards after the catch and in those type of situations. So please do not sleep on Devonta Freeman this year. Derrick Henry's coming in at number 14 for me. I know he's not going to get nearly as much passing work, but they signed offensive linemen this year. They've worked on that offensive line. They rode him last year. There's encouraging news coming out of camp, not only from the GM, but the head coach and the owner, about Derrick Henry is going to be a workhorse this year. I definitely think he has weekly running back one upside, but ultimately finishes just outside of running back ones, but he's in for a really, really good year. I wouldn't be surprised if he does crack that running back one area. Same thing with Marlon Mack. That's just that offense is so good. That offensive line is so good. He's going to have so much room to run. He's going to be a volume dependent guy. So maybe in some weeks where they get into a shootout and the Colts are throwing a lot, maybe Marlon Mack doesn't get nearly as many carries as we would hope. And those are some of those little things that will keep him out of running back one status for me. Nyheim Hines is also going to be the third down back, so Marlon Mack is not going to see as much work in the passing game as some other running backs might. Moving on now, we got Aaron Jones at 16. I love Aaron Jones. Dude is an absolute stud, but they have two running backs there that could really take away from him. And Matt LaFleur, I think the dude's a good head coach. I just don't think he manages his running backs very well, and I think that showed last year in Tennessee. So we'll see what happens there. I don't really trust that Aaron Jones is going to be a workhorse running back. That's why he's a running back 2 for me. But if anything happens to those other running backs or they decide to trust Aaron Jones, tons of upside. Damian Williams is coming in after that at number 17. He might be low for some of you. I'm keeping him down here right now just because I don't think he's going to be the workhorse. I wrote about it in some of our player profiles, so make sure that you get that draft guide, $19.99. You can get that pre-order right now. It will be available by the end of June. But there's a lot of things with Damian Williams I think is going to keep him from being a running back one. Kerryon Johnson, man. So we just heard today, like right before I started filming, Theo Riddick apparently is on the cusp. I mean, he's right on that roster bubble. He could end up being let go. If that happens, I think Theo Riddick is more of a deterrent to Kerryon Johnson being a high-end running back too than what C.J. Anderson is. C.J. Anderson's going to get his. He's going to get some groundwork. I don't think he gets nearly as much as Kerryon Johnson, but if Kerryon Johnson can get that for sure pass-catching work and we don't have to worry about Riddick, then at that point we're looking at a high-end running back 2 situation, especially if they run the ball as much as Bevel ran it in Seattle when he was there. Moving on from Kerryon Johnson, James White in a half PPR format. He's going to be one of the main targets for Tom Brady. We got to keep him there. Mark Ingram, I think, is going to be a really safe running back too this year. I do think a lot of guys are going to get different amounts of touches. I think Lamar Jackson is still going to run the ball quite often, so that keeps him out of that high-end running back 2 spot for me, but I think he's going to be consistent this year. I think they will keep his workload consistent throughout the season. I just don't think he gets nearly as many pass-catching opportunities. Kenneth Dixon, you never know. Maybe he ends up coming back. I don't want to say coming back. Maybe he ends up breaking out or stays healthy, stays on the field, and he becomes what the Ravens had hoped for. And, obviously Justice Hill, we really like him here on the Fantasy Headliners. He could have a good year too. Kenyon Drake, man, I want to believe in Kenyon Drake. I really like him. I think he has a lot of upside and a lot of potential, but I'm going to be realistic with his ranking at this point and put him in as a low-end running back 2. I mean, he was a running back 16 last year in PPR leagues, and in half PPR, I'm going to knock him down just a little bit. If we go full PPR, then he goes over Ingram, potentially goes over Johnson, potentially goes over Williams. But I still like Kenyon Drake. I think he's in for a big year if they really believe in him and let him carry the workload. Jake came up with a really great hashtag the other day, and I can't remember what it was. Give Drake the load or something like that. I can't remember. You know Jake, right? He's always saying stuff like that. It was a good one, though. It was a good one. After that, Leonard Fournette. I know people are going to hate on this spot for him. I do know that. I hate that offense, though. I don't think Nick Foles is the answer there. I don't think the wide receivers there are good enough to really make Nick Foles better. I don't love the tight end situation. Offensive line, it'll be okay. But I just don't love Leonard Fournette. Rashad Penny might be shocking to some of you, and maybe David Montgomery is as well. Rashad Penny wasn't all that bad last year. Him and Chris Carson were basically the same person. Chris Carson just got a bigger workload. Rashad Penny's been working out with some great running backs over the offseason, trying to build himself to become a better running back. He did lose a little bit of weight as well. If he can stay on the field, that first round draft capital, they're going to give Penny the workload, especially because Chris Carson had some offseason knee surgery. So because of that, Penny's been running with the ones. If he can gain that trust and show the offensive coordinator and the head coach and everybody else on the first team that he's the guy, he's going to get some of that workload. And David Montgomery, again, I know he might surprise some of you being that high up, but I like that Bears offense for the most part. I like the Bears offense better if they use the run game well. If they can use the run game well, David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen, if they can do both of those things, then I don't think they need to really rely on Mitchell Trubisky to win games for them. I think overall, year 2 there, I think that's going to get a lot better for them. Trubisky, hopefully he takes a little bit of another step forward. The offensive line functions well. David Montgomery, he's going to get some pass catching duties, not a whole lot because Cohen will get a majority of those, but I think he gets much more work in the run game, and I'm really not that worried about Mike Davis either. So I'm going to put him in as a low-end running back 2 for right now. So far, so good. So far, so good. I don't know how many of you are hating on the rankings or don't like them or agree with them and think they're good at this point. But again, as always, let us know below what you are thinking and what you want to do or what you would do with your rankings. Guys you'd move around, guys you'd change. Going into the running back 3 at this point, I just talked about Montgomery. Well, Tariq Cohen is going to be right behind him. These two are going to be right next to each other all year long, I believe. I think Montgomery separates himself a little bit, but not a whole lot. Josh Jacobs, that might surprise some of you. And if any of you had watched Jake's video the other day about do not draft running backs at their current ADP, him and I agreed on Josh Jacobs. He was the guy that we talked about quite often the other night. We were doing some game planning and some draft kit stuff, and we talked about Josh Jacobs for probably 20 minutes. And we were in agreement that, look, this guy just didn't carry a large workload in college, and all of a sudden we're expecting him to come in and be this running back 1 type of player. I get there's vacated targets there. I get they want to run the ball. I get they spent the draft capital on them. I understand all of that. I'm just not trusting Josh Jacobs or that offense. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. And don't forget, Jalen Richard last year was a serviceable PPR back. He caught the ball really well. He did a good job for them. He's not disappearing anytime soon. Josh Jacobs is just not a guy that I'm buying this year. Philip Lindsay, they're at 27 for me. I think him and Royce Freeman get a little bit better, a little bit closer in terms of workload being split. I almost put Royce Freeman into this area here, but there are some different things I'm going to do with these rankings before we get to the season. Again, we've got a lot more updates as we get closer. We'll change a lot of things around. Miles Sanders comes in at 28. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people this year, or maybe not. If you're a dynasty player, he might not surprise you or surprise you at all. He was my running back 1 in this class. He's going to be really good for the Eagles. He just won't get all of the workload yet. Jordan Howard is still there. So Miles Sanders, I do think, ends up being a solid running back 3 flex type play for you this year. Lamar Miller, the guy who's just been super consistent, had a career year last year. People keep sleeping on him. He's not a guy that I'll probably buy as my running back 2, just because he does have Foreman sneaking up behind him there, and I don't think that they'll use him in the passing game nearly as much as they could, because they have really good weapons at wide receiver there. So he is a little bit lower for me. Tevin Coleman coming in at 30. Jerick McKinnon just a couple of spots behind him. I think those two are really close this year. Tevin Coleman getting a majority of the workload on the ground with a few pass catching opportunities. Jerick McKinnon will be that pass catching back though. Darius Geis I have as a running back 3 right now. I do think he ends up beating Adrian Peterson out at some point, but when does that happen? If it takes him a while to get back and get into the flow of things and get working, I could understand why he might start off slow, maybe get a little bit better towards the end of the season, finish the year strong. If that happens, it will be too late for him to reach any higher than this. He's the guy I will be keeping a major eye on, though, because I could shift him down because Chris Thompson is still there. So if that ends up happening, that could end up being an issue that we have to look at later on in terms of how much workload will they actually get. Honestly, it's probably going to be a lot of different scenarios there, basically like what we see in New England. So it could be anybody on any given day. Coming in after Geis is Sony Michel. I have a hard time, really trusting Sony Michel this year as well, just because they have so many weapons. I mean, they brought in Damian Harris in the draft. They have Sony Michel. They have James White still. They have Rex Burkhead. Sony Michel has basically missed all of offseason camp at this point after having his knee looked at. So he hasn't even really started practicing that much yet. That could really hold him back some. I like Sony Michel. I think he can be a very good running back. But the only problem is what's going to happen there. What's going to happen there with all of the running backs they have. Again, it could be anybody at any point in time. Jerick McKinnon, talked about him already. Jalen Samuels, I mentioned him earlier with Connor. Again, I think Samuels gets a decent amount of work this year. Maybe not a guy that you can trust to play every single week, but I think he's a guy, and maybe in a game that's going to have a lot of points, it's going to have a lot of passing attempts where the scores are going to be running high. Then at that point, you can play Jalen Samuels. LaShawn McCoy and Ronald Jones going to finish it out here. Jake's gonna hate me when he sees this and sees that I put Ronald Jones there. But the reason I went with McCoy this high right now, and I say high, I was really iffy. Again, this was a place that I thought about maybe putting Royce Freeman in as well. But LaShawn McCoy being here, I'm still going to basically bank on him being the starting running back. He just has so many guys competing with him right now. So this is definitely a situation that could change. Ronald Jones as well. He's got a couple of guys that he's going to be competing with for that starting spot, but things have looked good so far. The reason I put him as a running back 3 is just his head coach. His head coach, Bruce Arians, finds a way to get the best out of his players. And if he can get the best out of Ronald Jones, and Ronald Jones becomes the starting running back there, it's hard not to think that in a half PPR format, if he's getting a lot of pass catching work, that he doesn't at least finish as a running back 3, just because that defense in Tampa is awful. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. There's going to be some high scoring games, I believe. And if that happens, Ronald Jones is probably going to be finding himself with some decent weeks, some weeks that, he finishes more of a running back 2, but it's going to fluctuate a lot. I think realistically, though, this is as high as we're looking at best with him this year. So, again, those are all my top 36 running backs at this point. So a lot of time, a lot of different things can change. I can go in. I'm probably going to mix some things up as we get closer to the year, as new information becomes available to me, as I continue to do my off-season research. Things are going to come up to me, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to bump this guy a little bit because of that. So, make sure you're keeping an eye on the fantasyheadliners.com. Our rankings are not up right now, but we are working on that to get those up as the same time as the draft kit goes up. And again, that draft guide, only $19.99, one of the best bargains in all of the fantasy sports industries. It's going to be packed full of information. So trust me 100% when I say you are not going to regret that purchase. Make sure you hit that like button for me as well. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the share button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Let us know in the comments below what you're thinking about the rankings as well. Good, bad, who would you move around? What would you change? Where would guys go? Anybody that should have been in here that wasn't, whatever it may be, let us know below. We'll comment back. Just make sure, again, the one thing that we ask of everyone here, just be respectful. If you don't like it, that's fine. But just say, hey, Kyle, I disagree because of this. Don't be like, hey, Kyle, you're an idiot. We don't like that. Anyway, peace out, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one.